Tony, welcome to the show.
Hey, Marcus, thank you for having me.
Hey, I'm excited to chat with you today. So, I'd like to start the show with a quick introduction of yourself and your company, Oyster.
Sure, let me start with myself. So, I'm originally from Lebanon. I had to move to France in my teenage years to study computer science, and I became a software entrepreneur 18 years ago after I did my MBA school, and I started a business in the API communication space. I built this communication platform that I grew to 100 millions of revenues in the first 5 years, took it public by doing a reverse merger with a company on the New York Stock Exchange called Vonage before it was acquired by Ericsson for $6.5 billion. And I left that business, took some time off, had to do some inner work on myself, clarify my purpose here on this planet. And that led me to start Oyster in January 2020 as a mission-driven company on a mission to reverse brain drain, reduce wealth inequality. And we do that by making global hiring as easy as local hiring. Essentially, we're removing all of the obstacles for company to tap into the global talent pool. The world is your oyster when you're looking for talent. And I live in the island of Cyprus after living 25 years in urban areas between the Bay Area and California, London, and a few other places. I decided I want to move closer to home. So I moved to the East Mediterranean and I live in the island of Cyprus, and I'm the father of three little kids.
Awesome. And Tony, we'll dive into the story and everything. But to start with your current company, Oyster, what's the current state of the company with any metrics that you can share, whether that be
Yeah,
revenue,
so
employee
mhm.
count, etc.?
Yeah, so we are around 450 people distributed in 70 countries from over 100 nationalities, gender equal across the board. Actually, 55% of women in the business, very intentional design of the diversity. We are hyper diverse, hyper distributed around the world. And we are not yet at 100 million, but we're not very far in terms of revenues.
Okay, awesome. And who are the ideal customers that use Oyster for their global hiring needs? Have you found that there are certain industries that are more prone to hiring overseas, such as software companies, marketing agencies, etc.?
Yeah, so our growth is correlated with talent shortage in the knowledge worker market. So the more an industry is faced with a knowledge worker shortage, the more they're gonna venture and look for talent outside of their borders. So obviously you see technology in there, but we have financial services, we have professional services, we have a long list of industries. And who they hire is also correlated with the talent shortage, which is what is in the most in demand as this world moves into a digital world is software developers and engineers and product managers. This is around 50% of the people we employ on behalf of our customers. And then we see more sales roles, marketing roles, accounting roles, customer service roles. So that would be the representation of the remaining 50%. And there's a long tail of many other knowledge worker jobs.
Yeah, so the one thing I'm really interested in understanding is sort of the trends that you've seen in hiring overseas. So, for example, obviously, a place like India has been very popular for software engineering roles over the last little while. Then also, I had an interview last week with a founder who hired a lot of his sales reps out of the Philippines. And he found there was very good cultural correlation between Filipino culture, who I love. We used to play I had a bunch of Filipino friends growing up who we played basketball together. They were amazing and a lot of
Yeah,
fun.
yeah.
They would always bring the whole family to the basketball court and they would bring a bunch of food for us. So we'd be eating chocolate bars in between games. It was awesome. So he found a very good correlation between the cultural values in the Philippines and American values, which made it very easy to hire them on the team. And then myself being in Colombia now, I've met a few people who have started looking to hire here for time zone differences or time zone alignment with US hours. So I'm wondering, in your experience and in the hiring trends that you're seeing, since you guys are on the forefront of it, what sort of trends do you see in terms of roles in specific places, like the ones I've mentioned, or have you seen new trends begin to develop?
So since the economy have shifted 3 years ago, and interest rate increased, companies are moving into optimizing their cost base, we've seen a meaningful increase for hiring in emerging economies. Actually, today, 3 years ago, that ratio was in the 25% of overall workforce that is employed on Oyster. It went up to 40%. And that's driven by the need of companies to find more cost-effective talent beyond their borders. As a result of that increasing demand for emerging market talent, we've seen salaries increasing in these countries. You live in Colombia, right? So engineers in Colombia have seen their salary increase meaningfully in the last few years. They remain much cheaper than engineers in the Silicon Valley, but their quality of life has been increasing because they can command a premium for their job when they're employed by a company in another country than being employed locally. Actually, every year we send hundreds of millions of dollars of foreign direct investment in form of salaries and taxes into emerging economies. This is critical for the world because the reason why emerging economies remain emerging is because they lose their best talent to more developed economies. So if you can get that talent to remain locally, and get 100% of their income received and partially spent in the local economy, then we have a shot in moving the world into a more equal world. And that's the mission of Oyster. I'd like also to mention that the cultural differences are I see them overrated. Companies that have monocultures, think about companies that are the vast majority of their people come from one culture, they do see cultural differences as an obstacle. But the more you diversify your company and the more you create diversity in your business, that belief system start to fade away and the company culture becomes more important. So investing strongly in your company culture gives you a massive opportunity to diversify your talent and create more opportunities for everyone on the planet.
That's very interesting. So it makes sense because, yeah, if you have a, let's say, a monoculture company and you're bringing in a different team from somewhere else, the differences will be obviously larger. Perhaps there's an accent, etc., because this is what everybody's accustomed to. And then if there's something different, it could be a bit different. But what you're saying is that if you've kind of set the company from the ground up to be from many different places, to be diversified throughout the world, there becomes this unique company culture that kind of unites all of the cultures that are a part of it.
Absolutely.
Interesting. Okay. So where did the idea
I mean,
come from?
I just want to say, Marcus, that
Yeah.
on that point is that these cultural differences are they exist, but where do they exist? They exist in the mind of humans. They are not real things in real life. So they are ideas, they are thoughts, they are feelings. So therefore, you can change them, you can delete them, and having built two multicultural companies in the last 18 years, I can tell you is that when you remove these thoughts, something very special happens. You start seeing human as human and not as Filipino or Egyptian or whatever. And that gets you closer to people, not further away. And people start feeling safe to be who they are and bringing their full self to work. And that's what magical about this experience that we're running at Oyster.
And how, so you started with your first company that was diversified throughout the world, remote company 18 years ago. And how did you go about then developing that culture? Because for many people, this is a new idea. Obviously, with remote work being possible in the last 20, 30 years or so, how did you go about or come about this thought process that you currently have and go into actually implementing that across multiple companies?
Yeah, so my first company was actually in-office company. We had offices all over the world. We were in 45 countries, and we had like hubs, London, San Francisco, for instance, were like the two major hubs, like Hong Kong for Asia. And and culture there was like we had our values, but reality the culture was driven from these offices, water cooler conversations and ping pong matches and Thursday beer afternoons and all these things that were influencing the culture. When I started Oyster in January 2020 as a fully distributed company, and then the pandemic happened, we realized actually we can shape our culture. We can be very intentional of defining what is our culture, and our culture became how we work together. So the tools and the rules that we use. The culture became how we relate to each other, how we build trust, how we create psychological safety, how do we care for people, and and it has to be top down, because you need, as a top leader of the organization, you have to model the way. Like, I need to be the best remote worker in my company for the model to work, and it worked brilliantly. We have retention rates that are 3 times higher than the average in the technology sector.
So you've been okay. And I want to go back a bit, Tony, and understand where the idea came from to start Oyster and how that started.
Yeah. So when I took time off, one of the goals for me took a year and a half of sabbatical, and I wanted to work on myself. I wanted to heal and grow internally, but also I wanted to figure out my next step. And I was working on a business plan that was similar to my previous company, but a better company, more disruptive company. And I had investor lined up, I had team ready to go, but I wanted this company to be fully distributed. And in my previous business, we were employing in 45 countries, but it was very painful. We had to build our own employment infrastructure. We spent millions of dollars setting up entities, hiring lawyer, accountant, payroll providers. So I didn't want to experience that again, especially as an early stage company. So I started looking for solutions. How do I do this at scale? I couldn't find solutions. What I found was an industry called employer of record that enables you to employ people in other country without setting up an entity, but it was completely professional services driven. No use of software, very expensive. It was fit for a company who wants to hire 2-3 people in a country to test the market and then decide if they want to set up their offices. But it wasn't fit for building this globally hyper distributed team. Um, and I got really obsessed about this issue. Like, how do I do this? I talked to lawyers, I talked to finance people, I talked to tax people, I talked to HR people. Um, and in November 2019, I was doing this retreat on my mental health, and it was really about consciousness development. How I kind of expand my consciousness and develop my consciousness. And I got the insight or the message say, you have to build Oyster. So the next day, I dropped my previous business plan and I incorporated Oyster as a mission-driven company, because I was guided to align my mind with my heart. And my heart was about helping people not experience the challenges that I had to go through to leave my community, leave my tribe, because it's not needed anymore. Great job opportunities can come to people anywhere in the world, and there's amazing talent in all these countries. These talents that are in emerging economies, if they rely for their career on jobs domestically, their potential is limited. But the moment you give them the opportunity to work with any company in the world is their oyster when they're looking for a job. Then they blossom, they shine, they you can tap into their full, you can elevate their potential, and have an opportunity to reverse the inequality in the world and brain drain.
100%. I love seeing that as obviously somebody who's been lived in a few countries that are, let's say, not the first world countries. And a lot of people I've met here locally, once they get jobs in with American companies, it opens up the amount, like what they can do. I see them, they travel, they're so happy, and they're super motivated to work as well. I've met a few people who, I remember I had met this taxi driver, and he was telling me his son was a software engineer and he worked for an American company. And I believe this family, they had lived in Venezuela for a while. So they had a very tough situation. They had to immigrate to Colombia. But their son got this job and he was working for an American company and he was able to pretty much take care of the whole family. And you could see how happy the dad was to
Yeah,
talk about his son and how proud he was of him.
proud.
Yeah. It's really great to see it firsthand and just feel the emotion of somebody telling you that story. So I want to ask you, Tony,
Yeah,
you still,
you want to shift the energy of this young talent in these countries because they are born in these countries that don't have great economies, that don't have great infrastructure, that are run typically by corrupt governments that don't care much about their people, and they you need to give them and therefore they lose hope as they're growing up. But if you give them the opportunity not to rely anymore and depend on their local infrastructure and the local government, they have hope, and you shift their energy and you can impact their life positively.
100%. And I see one of the big benefits as well is a lot of people, they love their culture. They love being close to their family and just being in that place. But then they oftentimes have to move to other countries for economic opportunities, which can be very difficult. And as you know, somebody who's left their home country at a young age, you miss back home, you miss your family and the familiarity there. And this is a nice way to bridge that gap and provide people with those opportunities without having to move. So, Tony, I want to go back. You mentioned to
Absolutely.
me that you started meeting with a bunch of lawyers, tax consultants, and a bunch of people as you started formulating the idea for Oyster. Can you tell me about I guess, the information gathering process that you had to go through to really understand this problem and how you can solve it? And then the early steps you took to build an MVP and grow a team to actually go and solve this problem.
Yeah. So when I start talking to these professional services people, the lawyers, the accountant, the HR people, I start gathering insight about the challenge and how it can be solved, the solution, uh, and um, and how I can use software because I'm a software entrepreneur. So how can we use software to create an abstraction layer between this fragmentation of all these regulation, employment laws, tax laws in the world? But I also spoke to when I start having an idea that actually there is a solution, that could be a solution there. I start talking to customers right away. I interviewed 20, 30 HR people in customer organizations. Say, guys, tell me about your pain points. And they were suffering. I mean, global employment is so hard to do. And many of them, they couldn't believe that there could be a solution for this. And that actually increased my determination. When people don't believe that it's possible, but you know it's possible, this is where you know that you have to go further. You have to go further because you're solving something really, really painful. And so we started the company in January 2020. We had nothing. We had no employment infrastructure, no software, and the pandemic happened. Uh, that was actually a launch pad for the business because the demand for what we have to offer went to the roof. Everybody wanted to hire cross border. There was strong talent shortage. There was no need to work in the office anymore. I mean, there's also people who wanted to change countries as well, to go back to their home country because there's no point for an Italian executive to be stuck in London if he or she can go work from Italy and be with their family. So, in the beginning, what we did, we very quickly created a web interface to get the customer to interact with the product, but behind the scene, everything was manual. So the priority was about the customer experience. And that was amazing because we could learn from what the customer are doing and what the customer need. Actually, these early customer interaction define our product roadmap. And we achieved product market fit in no time because the demand was there and we needed to show up to really capture the demand. We had to use certain marketing technique to elevate our presence in that market with all the noise that was happening during the pandemic. But that was an amazing moment, defining moment for Oyster.
That's awesome. So the timing was really good there. I want to dive into some of those early marketing strategies, but first, just understand. So you had a bunch of people working so you had your website up. People would go into the website and I guess they would enter in the information of their employee in another country, correct? And maybe they
Yep.
provide payments through the website or for them, or how. I'm just trying to understand behind the scenes, what was the manual work that you guys were doing before you had a fully functioning product?
Yeah. So example would be to generate a compliant employment contract, right? That would be a manual work. Now it's done automatically with AI in our platform. Is to give benefits, health benefit to somebody, you have to go and assign it, manually to them and talk to the health insurance company. Now it's like doing through APIs. You have to process payment and payroll. You have to get the customer to send you money. Now it's direct debit automatically on the website. You have to pay people in 30 different currencies. We had to go and do it in the bank account manually. Now it's completely automated. Uh, yeah, these are some examples of how we automated this huge problem.
Okay, yeah. And then what were those early marketing strategies looking like? Like, what platforms did you use to market? Were you going with outreach directly to your ideal customers, or what did that exactly look like?
Yeah, because actually demand was there for us to harvest. Inbound marketing was our key strategy. And we used a combination of paid, but also organic. And on the organic side, because we didn't have time to really mature our brand, I took myself out on social media and I built what we call today the founder brand that enabled me to be the face of the company, be this advocate for remote work, and actually benefit from the noise that was happening at that time, and talk about how we do things at Oyster because we were building the best remote company in the world that is the most distributed. So we landed our brand very rapidly through this type of guerrilla marketing.
And then you guys have grown very rapidly. You mentioned 450 employees, and you guys started just over 5 years ago. What sort of challenges have you had with that sort of rapid growth, and how did you overcome those challenges?
The biggest challenge was really the shift in the economy. I mean, the technology sector was having a big party when interest rate was zero. And so everybody raised a lot of money, hired a lot of people, thought it was going to be much bigger organization. And suddenly the music stopped. So we had to go through a number of restructuring to resize the business to adapt to the new reality of the market. Uh, and um, and it was really challenging because you cannot uh, cut too deep because you don't know what's going to happen in the economy. You don't want to slow down artificially your growth. And at the same time, you don't want to keep too much cost in the business because you might not be able to fundraise anytime soon, right? So we had to kind of develop a lot of financial discipline and capabilities to be able to steer the ship quarter after quarter. It's like you're driving a fast car, you're entering a curve. If you brake too early, too hard, you're gonna get out of it too slow. If you don't do that, you might get into an accident. So you
Mhm.
have to keep like millisecond by millisecond assessing your position in the curve to be able to maximize your way out of it.
No, it's interesting because around when you started the business is when I started my career in software. So what I'm used to has kind of been this turbulent last few years, which has been interesting to see. But yeah, it's cool to hear how you guys have pivoted through that with the business and how you guys have been able to handle those changes. I don't know, you've have a lot more experience, many more years than me. Has this last 5 years been especially turbulent in comparison to before, or is this sort of a normal pace of things in technology?
Look, for me, it was a lot of learning actually during the last few years, and one of the biggest learning is how do you create sustainable businesses, and how you don't get caught into the collective human ego that it's about growth at all costs. And so how do you take a step back and look at the big picture, because you're impacting people's life, and so but you also want to take risks. So how do you take more calculated risk? How do you make sure that these risks are better measured in order to continue to seize the opportunity? I always call it, there's this expression, the world is your oyster. But for me, it was my inner world was my oyster, because I had to do a lot of inner development to grow as a leader and evolve with the challenge that we were faced with.
And what sort of learnings and sort of challenge, or what have you had to internalize over the last 5 years of starting Oyster to make yourself a better leader and kind of understands that the market can be unpredictable, but you want to create a sustainable company that can weather those storms?
Yeah. So as we discussed earlier, is you have to really be mindful about your decision that you're making and their impact in the long term. So be able to measure the risk of the decision you're making better, and you want to focus on double down on your strength and focus the team more. I also learned the impact of leadership in these, like in these crisis situations, right? Leadership is a critical role in guiding a company through a turmoil like this. I've also learned the power of caring for people, and how remaining true to your mission and to your values is like airbags for you as a leader as you navigate these critical transitions.
Mm-hmm. Tony, recently Oyster released a new global payment platform. Do you mind diving into the new functionality of that platform and, yeah, what features it brings for your customers?
Yeah, so um, we launched this global payroll platform that complemented what we already have in terms of employment modalities. So if you think about companies, when they hire people in different countries, they have three ways to do so. They can hire them as contractors if it's compliant. Most of the case, it's not compliant, because if they're hiring them full time, the country or the country might not, the government might not appreciate that in terms of their taxes. So first one is hiring them as contractors. Secondly is hiring them on an employer of record platform like Oyster, where we are the employer, the legal employer of that person in that country. We take the employment risk, and we assign that employee to the customer. And the third modality so we had these two modalities in the platform, but we were missing a third one, which is hiring people on entities, on the existing entities of companies. So we've launched that in last year, and with contractor, employer of record, and global payroll. Now we cover all the modalities that companies use to hire cross-border. And by using software to make global hiring as easy as local hiring, we are removing all the hurdles in front of companies to tap into the global talent pool.
Interesting. So you guys have your own entity set up in all these individual countries. So when somebody's hired on, it's just like being hired on to a local company, which provides all of the health benefits, etc. That goes into that.
Exactly. So let's say take Valentina in Argentina. She's a great software developer. She
Uh-huh.
works for this amazing technology company in the Silicon Valley. She would be employed technically by Oyster Argentina entity. We would give her a payslip, we would give her an employment contract, we would give her a benefit, and she's assigned to their company in the Silicon Valley. That's the employer of record model. It's not new. It existed for 50 years. What is new is now it is softwareized, it's more scalable, it's more cost effective, and it provides much better employee experience for people around the world.
That's amazing. Yeah, I love that because obviously I've traveled around. I have lots of friends located throughout the world, and I understand the sort of challenges in certain countries dealing with the bureaucracy and how those things work. And it can be very complicated, and it could also vary a ton depending on where you are. So that's super cool how you guys are able to condense that into a single platform and provide those opportunities to people.
Yes, we want the world to look like one employment market, right? So if you're a company in any country, pick any country in the world, and you want to employ people, like you can employ them anywhere on the planet. That's our goal, and you can do it in a simple process on our platform. You get one invoice from us, and you are ensured that the employees are getting great employment experience and you are compliant.
Awesome. Tony, as we start to wind down here, I have a few questions about your perspective on leadership, sustainable leadership, and your overall vision for creating companies. Obviously, Oyster is a very large company, and you yourself have said that you have to be the best remote worker at the company and create something sustainable. You talk a lot about sustainable leadership online. Can you dive into what you mean by sustainable leadership and the sort of things you do on a daily basis to ensure that your company is sustainable for the long term?
Yeah, so sustainable leadership starts first by leading yourself sustainably. What does it mean and why it's important? It means that you have to become less and less reactive as a leader so you can create psychological safety and people feel safe to connect with you and work with you. It means that you have to remain balanced internally and clear so you can make clear decisions, specifically when it impacts people. And it also means you have to be a mission-driven leader. You're working on something bigger than yourself. It's not about you. It's about the collective. It's about the planet. It's about delivering positive impact in this world. That's what sustainable leadership is. And at Oyster, this is exactly what I've been learning and applying. And it's been a great journey for me as a leader to grow and as a human to do that. And I'm super grateful for having that opportunity.
Do you have any specific habits that you do or things that you do to keep yourself level and healthy?
Yeah, so it starts first with calming the mind. The human mind has millions of thoughts a day, and many of them are not needed or are negative. So this is unfortunately, this is how we are programmed as we grew up in this world at this time. So you have to become aware of these thoughts and become that you are not your thoughts and manage them out so they don't keep coming back. And secondly is you have to reprogram your nervous system. So essentially becoming more in touch with your inner feelings and emotions and what's going on inside of you and learn how to create boundaries so you don't actually have to externalize these into your organization. So obviously meditation, exercise, music, sound healing is important. Spiritual development is important. So all these some techniques that I've been using in the last few years to help me lead myself better so I can lead others in a healthy way.
Awesome. So, yeah, cultivating things that make you happy. I know for me personally, one of the things I love to do is salsa dance. And living here, it's not something that you always feel like doing. Sometimes I just don't want to go. But every time I go and do it, you end up feeling so much better afterwards. And you're out your head, you're listening to music, you're connecting with somebody. Yeah.
Dance is really important. I also use dance. I use a type of dance called ecstatic dance that
Okay.
enables you to shift the energy in your body. It's like a free flow dance with specific type of music that is guiding you along the way. And I've been doing it on Zoom for the last few years, every week. So it's been great to practice that.
Is that with the team at Oyster, or when you say on Zoom, is that with other people? You guys are doing that together, or?
Not yet, but I hope I can bring them soon to Oyster.
That's awesome. So, Tony, I have a few final questions for you here. One, I want to go back to the vision. Obviously, we talked about remote work, your beliefs around remote work, but I would like to know what's the vision for Oyster in the next 5 to 10 years, and what are the big goals that you guys are focused on?
Yeah, so we are guided by our mission to make the world more free and equal. So our product roadmap is driven by removing all the barriers in front of companies to tap into the global talent pool. And we still have a lot of work to do. Today, we probably softwareized 60-70% of the overall experience. And now with AI, we are accelerating our automation journey. But it's also about people. We want to make sure that the people we serve, HR professionals, and the people they serve, the team members on our platform, are really taken care of. So we're investing as well in making sure that they feel safe and they trust that experience.
Awesome. And Tony, you have many decades of entrepreneurial experience. You've started many companies. What's the number one piece of advice that you would give to your younger self?
Follow your purpose and your passions earlier, and be driven by your purpose.
Awesome. Tony, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thank you for having me, Marcus.